Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be going over a road to Victorian State Championships, and this is the general physical preparation block. So this is the first training block in the lead up to this big mountain, which is in October, Victorian State Championships. Victoria is a little bit unique compared to some of the other states in Australia where we do states after nationals, but that's not the discussion for today. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the athletes that recently competed, so that might come up in your mind when you're watching this video. But if you're one of my members, you're going to have a little bit more of an understanding as to what we're trying to actually achieve this next training block and the subsequent training blocks, and what some of the themes that are going to be driving, I guess, the main kind of training philosophy, what we're going to be working on when we're coming into the gym this week, and in this training block. We're about halfway through it at this point of this presentation, so by the time I'm recording this, we're about week 2, and if you're someone who's following me from Instagram and you are, keeping up to date with some of the stories, some of the posts, you'll be able to see maybe a bit more context as to what we actually do at the gym, what we're working towards, what our programming typically looks like for our athletes, whether they're online or in person. And these will just be for the athletes that compete in weightlifting. So it's going to be a lot of fun. So you're going to understand a little bit more about that. If you want to skip ahead to some of those sections, you can. I've got the timestamps on this video just in the caption. We'll start with the Geelong 2 recap because obviously got a bit of jumping propaganda there at the beginning. Fantastic warm-up for you guys. This was a competition that we had 4 athletes compete in, and for Adam it was his first comp. Ming went 6 out of 6. Olivia PB'd both lifts, I believe. And then Hope put up a great total as well. So you guys can look at this on YouTube, but I just wanted to compile some of your lifts and just put this up there. So, whenever you want to look back at previous performances or look back at some of the lifts that you made, kind of cross-compare, because no doubt by the end of this phase, you will be a different athlete and you should be far more powerful. And even if you may not necessarily gain too much strength in this next phase, you will be significantly more efficient at the lifts that you can perform. So that was a fantastic lift by Olivia, missing it behind, and then not typically do athletes make the next one, they typically miss it in front. So that was good to see. Hope powered and then blasted this jerk, and then you'll see later in this video, if you guys, my members, are watching this, I love to take the piss out of Adam, and Ming did startle me on that first snatch, and then I think I pan over after he hits 85 and look for Adam Marsick's response. Whenever I can create an opportunity for competitiveness in the gym environment, I will take it and try and make the athletes kind of fight against each other on the platform or share a platform together. And ultimately, most of the times they both walk away with PBs. So this is a cool recap. And just looking at Adam as well, have only been performing weightlifting since the beginning of the year, and he's just killing it. Nearly hit this 100 clean and jerk. I don't know what happened. He must have blanked out. When he was performing the jerk, because I think he was complaining a little bit of lower back fatigue or soreness into this last attempt, but should have just held on for it there. And then Ming with his final clean and jerk. This was awesome. This was to go 6 out of 6. He'd previously had a massive fail in the previous week where he pretty much fell on the ground after hitting this 104. And then, at the comp to hit 105 and then to jerk it is awesome. Just a legend. Love watching him lift. Heading towards interstate. So we had Anna compete recently, and then Zoe. Zoe took out the best female weightlifter of the whole competition and the Victorian and the New South Wales state champ. So that is awesome. And she did it on powers. So that's fantastic. So looking good going into her selection for Commonwealth Championships, which is awesome. And then Anna wrapping up an awesome comp at Queensland State Championships. Love that little rock into the heels, lifting the toes up on that snatch. And then should be able to fast forward to this last one. I think I added the clean and jerk in, but regardless, some great lifting from Anna as well up in Queensland. So good to see some representation statewide as well from Accardi. And then fantastic that Zoe's been selected for to represent Australia in her first Commonwealth Championships, which is awesome. So she's the only 64 senior that's going and representing Australia. So I'm really excited for her to compete in September later this year. So very exciting. Now, the actual program. So what is the driving force behind this GPP training block heading into state champs? And we're about 4 training blocks out. And you've probably heard of my obsession with Mykonos Alekna and just the obsession with raw power and Lithuanian discus throwers. And somehow it has just managed its way to manifest itself, at least my interpretation of what an extremely powerful and one of the most powerful athletes that exists currently, I'd say, in the throwing world is the Aleknas. There's the two brothers. So what we want to try and understand is, well, Mykonos might not be the strongest athlete in out of the discus, and even in things like shot put as well. That some of the athletes might not be the strongest athletes or the biggest athletes, but the ones who are the most explosive, have the highest rate of force development. They can implement the fastest, and they make use of that quality are the athletes who can throw the furthest and are the most efficient. So if you think about in weightlifting, you might be extremely strong, but the conversion of those lifts, so for example, your squat to clean ratio or your clean pull to clean ratio, depending on the speeds that you can achieve and the time that it takes to reach those speeds is going to determine how efficient you'll be at maximizing the strength that you have. So in this training block, we're just going to be starting with power and just keeping that theme all the way going into competition. So our strength work is going to be very simple. We're just going to be hitting basic strength work, keeping some straight sets on a set load. We will have some velocity parameters as well on those, and we'll talk more about those later. But as far as the main thing we're going to be focusing on is a bunch of movements where we're just focusing on output on the lifts. So we're trying to not necessarily focus on the technical components, because most of you have the technical components down pat. So we want to try and steer away from this skill and technical lens and feel that it's okay to bastardize some of the technique on some of the lifts, particularly the ones that we're allocating velocity metrics to, and just focus on output. How fast can we move the bar, and how quickly can we accelerate that bar as well? So as far as block goals, the elastic and power development are our big rocks. So although we're going to have weightlifting in the program every day, we are going to be focusing on elastic and power development, whether it's elastic and power development into those exercises and trying to focus on those movements with the barbell with that lens, or just use different exercises to develop that quality as well. So currently we're about 4 months out from October 26th, the state champs, and we're just focusing on general athletic development. So for you guys, for a bunch of you, I've just said to you, well, a lot of these things, a lot of these qualities with the fast bench press, the box squats, these exercises, this is just a global way to develop power. And we can do that with almost any movement, and then we're going to see a positive change to your weightlifting. And all of this is really just designed so we can handle higher intensities and improve our weightlifting long term. So many of you I've spoken to you this week, you've said, I just can't go any faster. I just can't, it's saying 2 meters a second. I just can't hit those speeds. Or, perhaps you're reading the actual metrics that you're getting on the eNode, or you're looking at it on the VBT apps that we've been using. And a lot of you are saying, I'm trying to go harder, but I just can't. And the limitation is not in your muscle, it is in your brain. So your nervous system's ability to contract your muscles and hold tension in those tissues, and how quickly it can activate those tissues is going to be the thing that's going to limit or potentially help the speeds that you can achieve. So a lot of you might be capped at the speeds that you can actually hit. And each week we're seeing, not necessarily, especially for the eNode, but we're seeing lots of you are seeing the improvement in the ability to accelerate the bar, even though the speeds may not necessarily be increasing. So don't worry if the speeds aren't changing. That's fine. They will over time. You will be able to hit higher speeds, but what you'll see first is just the ability to accelerate to those same speeds will improve as well. So that's something we've definitely observed in squats, bench press, and those kinds of movements. So ultimately, power is in the brain, and consider this training block more of like a neuromuscular or neuro program where we're developing this quality. As far as the metrics that we're going to be tracking, so you guys have got pretty good at just looking at the program, taking a picture of the program, or looking at it on the spreadsheet and just going into your notes and writing those things down. But now we have a few more metrics that we want to be tracking. So lots of you are quite good at data collection and writing these things in a spreadsheet. So if you do currently use notes, I'd urge you to switch over to a spreadsheet. It's much easier for you to track these things. And if you need help with that, you can just ask me. But as far as tracking these variables, we're going to stick to some relatively consistent things, which makes programming for me so much easier because the program's going to be very similar for the next 4 months. But we're just going to be tracking these variables over the next months and weeks and leading into these to this competition. So if progress does stall, or you find that your weightlifting isn't improving, or for whatever reason, we can just look back at some of these things and we know exactly why, because we've allocated these certain exercises or these certain movements to be of high priority to us. And then these also serve as components to building a powerful athlete. And I'll show you what these are. So these are the things we're going to be working on. And we have our elastic development, our strength development, and then our power development. So elastic is just the jumping exercises. So the ones that are in blue are the ones that I've been more conscious of tracking with the eNode. The others, we've been just letting the VBT app kind of take those, and I've just been sparingly tracking those and using the eNode here and there, which is that little device you're seeing me use on the music stand at the moment. As far as the drop jump goes, we've just been getting used to trying to land from higher heights and just trying to be as quick as we can on the ground contact. Rocket broad jump we've been tracking for almost a year now, or maybe a bit longer. The squats are, again, a key component to our strength work. Accardi Complex, the difference between that one and your power and hang power cleans is obviously we're linking that and trying to touch and go those reps, which has been a great challenge for a lot of you, and trying to learn to deal with that eccentric. And then obviously we can see some of the other movements, the box squat and the speed bench I'll go through as well. This is an overview of the structure of the program. So you'll have this if I've shared it with you on your emails. So you've got the program in there, but the actual structure and the way that it's laid out is typically something like this. So it can be performed as a 6-day program. There is 3 power sessions. Obviously, that's the most important quality to us at the moment. If you do Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then you can go to the gym normally, the normal 24-hour gym or whatever. Some of you, like Ming, have been just doing that, and Adam, and then blasting the day 6, we're just calling it, which is the bodybuilding circuit, which is just like 10 exercises and almost going to failure on all of those and just getting a massive pump. But if you come Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you're going to be getting a fair bit of everything. And Fridays and Tuesdays are our only strength work. So we're really trying to double down on that quality on those days and then focus on trying to be fast, explosive, and have more of a polarizing load selection throughout the week. So you're not just going to be doing the same weights every time. It's perfectly fine on Mondays for them to be a little bit lighter, a bit faster, and that's cool. And that's how we're going to develop that quality. Elastic development, so I've touched on that before. We're trying to work on really short ground contacts on our depth jumps, and it's perfectly fine if you don't jump as high. I'd rather you set the speed of the ground contact and then build the height over time. And for people like Ming, I've already seen an improvement in that quality just by training it in that way, so which is fantastic. And then we've spent months accumulating and just trying to develop these plyometric exercises. So you all know what rudiment hop series is when you come in on a Monday. Forward, backward, lateral, you get those done. There's usually one kind of novel movement. We've been doing those slalom leaps. Swivel leaps have been always quite interesting to watch from you guys. And then you've got your tucks, your leaps with the tuck and leaps for height after, and then we get into depth jumps. So there's a fair bit of elastic development on day 1, and then just trying to think about creating greater transfer to our weightlifting. So in exercises where we're trying to be short and sharp in our dip and drive, I've just, a lot of you maybe find it quite difficult to dip and drive quite fast. I just want you to try and be as reactive as possible and trying to be as elastic as possible, and you'll adapt to those speeds over time. But it might feel quite weak at the start, but at least having one day in the program, especially on the weeks where at this stage we've split up the clean and jerk on the final day on Fridays, so you can work on that quality a bit more without thinking about load as much. And then continue to work on our stuff in deeper ranges on the Friday before we get into our broad jump. So just increasing capacity in that squat pattern and just improving that. As far as the elastic development exercises, so I've touched on already depth jumps and stuff like that before, but trying to, work on trying to be as quick as we can off the ground. You can do it with your hands, without. We've just been tracking data from both. Adam's quite powerful as well. And then we've got Ming. He's been progressing on these each week, which is fantastic. So all working on a 20-inch box. And then we've just got some other movements in the program. So obviously all your deeper variations, your deep forward leaps, broad jump, frog jump, very cute with Michael and Ming bumping these out. And then your slump bounds as well. So just trying to work on, perhaps in a single leg as well. Another environment. And then more depth jumps. Fantastic. I'll do. Power development. So this is the second component, the second big rock, if you will. So just trying to increase the acceleration profile. So we're basically just trying to move the same weight, even if it's at the same speed, just get to that speed faster and trying to unlock faster speeds in your brain. And it's just been a combination of barbell and plyometric exercises. So if we look at the movements that we've been using, this is a sick montage. So obviously we've got just some older footage of Luke, Bunnings, and obviously Zach just pumping out some broad jumps. We'll just keep the broad jump in the program, and I've just been tracking the metrics each week as you do those. So we just have, massive library of data to come back towards and just keep working on, how does this broad jump data kind of track over time. Then we've just got a counter movement jump. So we've got Clint performing counter movement jump, and then we've been tracking those with the E-node or just holding dumbbells, and we've had loaded jumps throughout the program and just keeping those in the program. Some of you have step-ups like Bryony, and then obviously we've got Sang blasting a massive broad jump there. And then your high hang cleans and high hang snatches. So anything with a short range of motion we've been focusing on a lot more. And then just getting you guys used to a fast eccentric in both a squat and a push pattern. So in a bench press and in a box squat, and just trying to be faster overall. So not worrying about, it doesn't matter if I'm not doing a back squat. It just matters, am I getting faster? And for the slower athletes, just trying to make them more powerful. And the box squat's a perfect place to start. So obviously, I've got Jake on here, obviously quite an explosive athlete, and it's just going to continue to develop that quality and probably potentiate some strength benefits as well. Box squats, just touched on that. And then what we're trying to work towards. So with these, we've been tracking velocity a bit more on these ones. So we're just trying to work on how fast can we go down in a squat. And starting here with the box is fantastic, because we can overspeed this far more than what we could normally, maybe in a deep squat, or, typically see people, as things get heavier, the speed of the eccentric is going to decrease, and that's typically normal. But we're trying to, load these up relatively heavy over the weeks and trying to adhere to some average velocities on this one. If you start the block at around 0.75 or just under 0.9, stay at those loads, get used to those speeds, and then try and push towards 1 meter a second. For some of you more powerful athletes, or just people who are stronger in general, someone like Mark, Bryony, we're probably going to have to band this squat so that it doesn't just pop off you. And then you'll notice on, when you look back at your own squats, or when you look at the data, you'll just see where you're strong in the lift, and you might find you hit high speeds, but it takes you a long time to get there. And that's what we want to try and work on. So even if we hit the same speeds over 6 to 8 weeks, I don't really care as much. I'm focusing on how are we getting to those speeds? And I know I've said that so many times, but that acceleration curve is what's really important. The bench press. Many weightlifting gyms probably looking at us quite suspiciously at the moment as to what are we even doing. But yes, you've got the option where you can have, if you've got a jumper, put the ab mat underneath the jumper. The blue ones work the best. Or you've got the pad, the red pad. That's not what we call it in the gym though. We've got the pad that you can put on the barbell and just try and work on timing the bounce off your chest. Some of you have actively tried to pull it into your chest and then just winded yourself and told me about that the next day. So just try and work on, creating quality technique and just trying to create repeatable technique on that. Now, don't mind if these stay at relatively similar loads. I know Michael and Ming have been working around 50 kilos on these, and every week the time to peak velocity just keeps decreasing. Every week they're accelerating faster and faster. So just load the same and we'll just continue to chip away at that. Just want to touch on the Accardi Complex because it's something that perhaps you've seen online, but if you're one of my members, you're kind of just confused as to why we've just called it this. This is Luke, one of the leaders of the Accardi Complex, and this is him hitting 140, which is just insane because, you know, obviously a lot of you are just getting used to linking and touch and going the second rep, and this is how short the time to peak velocity. This is how quickly he's redirecting that bar on the second rep, and that's 145, and that's just insane. So at those loads, the rate at which you can develop power, I guess this is our gold standard. This is what we're trying to work towards, and Ming's doing a great job, and a lot of you guys are actually doing quite well at learning how to, you know, coordinate that, stiffen at the right time, opposed to just letting the weight just like whack on you. There's definitely obviously some skill components there, but we can work on output and create really powerful second pulls just from this short range of motion exercise. So why velocity? I know I've touched on this briefly at the start, but we can, in order for us to actually develop power, or how do we know that we're developing power if we aren't tracking the variable? So if we are just trying to move things that are light quite fast, we don't really know how we're improving or where the improvement's coming from and what we need to focus on. So we get a better understanding of you as an athlete, but we also understand just by tracking these metrics, we can see quite clearly when it's a good opportunity to increase in load, and then, you know, maybe when we need to stay at the same load for a bit longer rather than just trying to add weight. So this is how we're going to determine it. It's also a fantastic motivational tool. So for a lot of you, I've never seen you move as fast as you have. As you know, you filmed your lifts in the past, and I've stood in front of you. Mario and I have, you know, the whole room's gone quiet, but nothing has been as motivating as this thing here tells you a certain speed, and you need to beat this speed. That has had the greatest impact on pretty much everyone's training. So just that alone, without even tracking the data, just knowing that there's a speed gun on you, changes things completely. So that's exactly what we want to try and keep in the training, because we have high intent on pretty much every rep. I'll talk a little bit more about tracking it and whatnot in the later slides, but just putting it on for your working sets and then using it as a bit of a temperature check, or, you know, once you understand what your data is a little bit better, so over the next few weeks, you'll probably understand those metrics a bit more, and you'll learn a bit more about yourself, and you know roughly what does this feel like. Oh, that felt like a 1.8, 1.9, and you'll get a better understanding of your speeds in general and your athleticism. The last thing is just don't expect large increases in speed each week. So unlike exercises where, you know, in a squat, even in some of your cleans, we can kind of just keep adding 5 kilos each week, but we're not really getting more powerful. We're not really getting more explosive. It's just programmed like a strength exercise, and we want to try and steer away from that. So, but because we're doing that, you might be staying at the same weight for a while. So I want you to shift your perspective, and instead of thinking like I'm lifting light, I want you to think that I'm lifting fast. So just like this guy here, lifting fast is the goal and the objective, and we're just trying to develop that quality. So instead of progressing load, we're trying to progress velocity. So just trying to work towards those targets that I've set for you in the program. What to look for? So as far as using the application, if you're on iOS, if you've got an Apple phone or whatever, you've got Metric. If you're on Android, you've got Quick. Quick looks like it was made many years ago, but it still works just as fine. The things that we want to see, so this is just an example of a step up, and this is a back squat, but it doesn't really matter. What we're going to see is we'll just have some numbers on the side here. On the free version, you'll just have the velocity trace that you'll look at the bottom of the set, and all we want to see is that velocity trace above that line or that number that we're trying to hit. So for example, in your clean pulls, we want to see 2 meters a second or getting towards 2 meters a second. So how close is that peak on the velocity trace at that line? And you could just look at the rep, finish, look at the number. Okay, great. It's this number. Move on. It doesn't have to take a long time, particularly for the metric one, because it does crop the actual recording. Whereas the quick one, you have to crop it yourself and takes a little bit longer. on an exercise like the step up or anything that has a smoother acceleration profile, this is where you guys have been getting confused. You're looking at the number and you're like, I'm so slow on clean pulls, and it says 1 meter a second, but that's not the variable we're looking for. We're looking for peak on those. On your bench press, on your squat, we're looking at average or mean velocity. So we're just trying to look at those numbers and just focus on them. And it doesn't really matter because those will tell a good story on those, since the profile's quite smooth and the rep's quite smooth, and there shouldn't be any grinding. So there's no need for us to look at peak velocity. Now, I've touched on this before, but if you get told to stay at this same weight, I don't want you to fear velocity jail. So lots of you are going to be going, and we're going to be all sent to velocity jail for the next probably 10 weeks, and working at similar loads and just trying to hold those speeds or progress those speeds. And it's going to be a lot less obvious than just adding 5 kilos to the bar. And we're just trying to work towards expressing higher speed. So for a lot of you, you've obviously noticed, maybe you're capped at a certain speed, and it's just going to take time for your brain to unlock those speeds. Again, appropriate use of AI art. Then as far as, while we're on this topic of AI art, this is a traffic light system, and this is just how you can think of it. And this is from my friend Jack Edwards. It's just what he was doing with his athletes, and I think it's fantastic, and we'll just do the same. Mario's sketched one up on the blackboard as well, so it looks really cool. But essentially, green light. If you've got a green after you finish your session, next week you can increase load. Yellow, stay the same. Red, decrease in load. So for most of you, you're going to be hitting yellow lights for the next couple of weeks, or even decreasing. And as far as like a practical application for these velocity targets, it might just result in maybe 10 kilos less load than what you typically use on these same exercises to develop this quality. Last thing about just tracking data. What gets measured gets managed. If we are tracking this and you guys are held accountable to put these things in your spreadsheets, not only will you get more immersed in just the training process in general, but you'll also just get way more out of it. You'll just become a more explosive, more powerful athlete. You'll know what your data is. You'll understand where you need to work on. And, overall, it's just going to enrich the training process. But if you're not tracking it and you're not familiar, or you haven't been practicing that, just write down the loads that you use. It can feel quite overwhelming. So if you do need help, that's fine. But there's exercise in the program. It just says what we need to track on those days, and getting this across to you guys, just like whether it's with nutrition, just whether it's financial goals, whatever it might be, trying to track those things is going to make sure that this is actually going to happen, and all of you will become more powerful and be a different athlete after it. Thank you so much for watching. If you're interested in training with us, obviously we have a gym down in Bundoora. Bundoора's been getting lots of, it's the hot spot on social media at the moment. But of course, if you're interested in working with us remotely, you can send an inquiry online or send me a DM. And if you just want a program, you just want a place to start developing power, and you want a bit of a resource to go with it as well, there's a 60-page ebook that comes with an 8-week power program, and that is linked below or linked in my bio. So hopefully you guys got something out of this. If you're a member of mine, awesome. Let's actually go. Let's get into it. So I'm excited for this Lithuanian power program gains to really kind of hit their stride in the next couple of weeks, and as you guys get used to the new exercises. So thanks so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one.